Hi there, I'm Zara Denejo, and this is the Roundup with Zara Denejo. Recently, the National Assembly voted on the proposed amendments to the 1999 Constitution. It considered 68 bills, some of which related directly to the status of Nigerian women as citizens, as politicians, and as stakeholders in nation building. In particular, Bill 37 sought to amend the Constitution to allow for 35% affirmative action for women in political party structures. It failed due to insufficient votes. Another bill, which would have allowed Nigerian women to confer citizenship on their non-Nigerian husbands as their male counterparts do, failed due to insufficient votes. Understandably so, Nigerian women are not happy about it. On Wednesday, the 2nd of March 2022, Nigerian women marched in protest to the National Assembly. Joining me to discuss this is Ms. Chioma Agwebo, who was at the protest and is ED at TECA. Ms. Agwebo, welcome to Roundup.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, what happened at the National Assembly?
To be honest, I think this is a question we need to ask the members of the National Assembly themselves. I think it's incomprehensible that in 2022, Nigerian women are still trying to negotiate their rights as full citizens of the country. Because, I mean, if you look at the bills that were presented, the gender bills, we're not asking for too much. As a matter of fact, I think it's even shameful that in 2022, we're asking for these types of things. We are the supposed giant of Africa. We are the ones supposed to be leading the continent. We're one of the worst as far as women representation in politics is concerned. I think the thing that's even more worrying for me is the fact that the legislators believe that they're giving women a gift, right? The concept actually is wrong. You're correcting an anomaly because this is not what should be happening. This is not the state of play that we should be operating within. Look at the Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill. It's been presented to the National Assembly over the past 5 years. Each time it goes, it fails. Women take it back. They work on it. They whittle down the provisions a little more. They make it more of a toothless bulldog.
Why does it seem as if anything related to Nigerian women, the National Assembly, both houses, shoot it down?
I think this is primarily because we do not have a National Assembly that is truly representative of the yearnings of Nigerians. Because Nigerian women make up 50% of the population. If women are saying we want to be recognized, if we're saying we want to be included, if we're saying allow people with capacity, with character, and with the competence to do so, to rise to positions of authority, both within political parties, in positions of leadership outside of political parties, but especially, across the legislature, we're not asking for too much. The perception of women in Nigeria is problematic. This is why, the National Assembly believes they're giving us a gift. I read something in the news today that said late lobbying contributed to the failure of these bills.
Hold on to that thought because I want us to talk about lobbying after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Ms. Chioma Agwebo to talk about the lobbying efforts that followed these bills. Stay with us. Welcome back to Roundup. I'm Zara Denejo. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the gender bills that failed at the National Assembly in its constitutional amendment process that terminated in the 2nd week of March 2022. Ms. Agwebo, you were talking about late lobbying efforts. One of the things that stood out for me is one of the bills, the amendment bills, was saying that special seats, up to 111 special seats, were going to be created for women in the National Assembly, and they were going to be exclusively held by women and for women. I already know how you feel about it with the look on your face, but do you think that women groups lobbied for the wrong amendment?
I think that, and we must give kudos to every Nigerian woman who has been literally battling for some sort of representation at all levels of governance, so local government, state government, and then of course the legislature. If you look at Nigeria today, I think that we have the worst representation of women in politics that we've had since we returned to democracy. I think one of our best times was 2007. Nigeria today, we have 469 people within the National Assembly and only 29 women. It doesn't make any sense. And I think women have gotten tired of asking and presenting various opportunities to correct this problem. and they've gotten shut down. And so they thought, you know what, if you're unable to create a level playing field, because whether we like it or not, the game is currently rigged against women.
Yeah.
Look at the 2019 elections and how many people ran for office, how many people got substituted, how many people were scared away by violence. And sometimes people say, if you can't take the heat, don't go in the kitchen. How are we comfortable with a society that, you know, that breeds violence during election season?
But it would seem to me that Bill 37, which would have made it constitutional for political parties to have at least
I was just coming there.
Women. Yeah, I feel like that should have been more of a priority.
We have to shift power, to be honest. And again, I have to go back to saying that I have to give kudos to women. Right? Look at women organizing across various levels. And it comes back to my just acute disappointment with the National Assembly, because you realize that it wasn't about any of the bills. It was just about the fact that we do not want any of this to go through. Because I can imagine that some of the legislators didn't even think about what they said no to. It was just like, I mean, if you watched it, you know, on television, they were just, it was bandwagon no. Right? And I don't even think that the question of lobbying doesn't, should arise, because don't forget what I said. We're not asking for something you're going to bestow on us. This is not a favor. We're asking that you correct the wrongs of the past. So as a legislator, are you not aware when something's wrong? Something needs to be corrected? So this thing about lobbying, to be honest, is a bit lazy to me, and it's just like passing the buck and trying to excuse, the shaming that women are currently, women are running them through. Because how do you say women cannot confer citizenship on their husbands? How do you say, and we know that currently women in Nigeria end up being stateless. So before you get married, you belong to where your parents are from. After you get married, you are supposed to be where your husband is from. But in Nigeria, when she wants to run for office, they tell her, no, go back to your father's house. And then her father's house tells her, go to your husband's house. And we end up stateless in our own country. But when politicians come to us for our votes, they don't remember that we end up stateless. When they come to us for our votes, they don't remember that we are rigged out of leadership and we're not included in decision making. And I guess that's why women are saying enough is enough. Do I have my personal questions about the 111 seats? Of course I do.
But do you agree? Do you agree with it?
I agree with women inclusion, Zara.
But do you agree with setting aside, Chioma, do you agree with setting aside a number of seats across the National Assembly for women to exclusively for women?
I think that special situations call for special circumstances. Rwanda, which is currently the leader as far as women representation in politics is concerned on the continent, my other sentiments about Rwanda aside, when they needed to make the change, they enacted laws that ensured that within a few years, the situation was changed. France, right? And sometimes we look at the West as the doyen for equality, but even France had this problem. And what did they do? They enacted laws across the legislature, across executive leadership, but also across business. And they said everybody had 5 years to match up to 40% women leadership. Wow. And in that time, France currently stands at about 44% or 45%. These are not things that you wish away. The work has to be done. The legislation has to be done. And that's all we're saying. And so France saw it as righting a wrong. Rwanda saw it as righting a wrong. Namibia, other countries on the continent that Nigeria is supposed to be leading, have seen that we need equal representation of men and women. You look at I do a bit of work around sexual and gender-based violence. I promise you that the reason why we continue to struggle with sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria is because we do not have the right people in place as far as the key legislation is concerned. Look at the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. It used to be called Violence Against Women, and it continued to fail within the National Assembly. Why? There is the overwhelming victimhood for sexual and gender-based violence lies with women and girls. But till that bill was changed from the Violence Against Women to Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill, the Persons Prohibition Act, it wasn't passed.
Yes.
So we come back to the core problem, which is the way Nigeria sees its women. And that's what needs to change. Yeah. Otherwise, and this is my reservation with the 111 seats, that provides an immediate answer. It doesn't tackle the problem of perception. It doesn't tackle the patriarchal structures that mean that even when the Not Too Young to Run bill passes, for instance, young women fail when they try to stand for office because it's seen as, how can this young woman want to
Yes, but wouldn't it be a better argument? So, for example, the pipeline from political party structures to actual elective office is quite active. Wouldn't it have been better and I want to play devil's advocate here, wouldn't it have been better for, let's say, for example, civil society organizations to insist and to lobby and to harp on having women in political party leadership positions first than to have just seats created? And is it the opposition to those seats, is it really
the question
patriarchal or just not, it's just not realistic?
The truth is, you ask the question, how old is Nigeria? How old is this our democracy? And politicians will always run to say our nascent democracy. But how long have we been a democracy? Equality cannot wait, right? Look at Nigeria today, for God's sakes, right? Do you think that we have the time to start? And I don't even think it's a civil society question. I think it's a Nigeria question. And I think this is the yearning of women. Do you think we have the time to start with, political parties? I remember when we did the advocacy for the Not Too Young to Run bill to be passed in 2018. Mr. President signed it into law on the 31st of May, 2018. We did marches to all the political parties, APC, CUPP at the time, PDP, Labour. We literally went to all the parties and we said to them, now that we have this bill, prioritize the inclusion of women, prioritize the inclusion of people with disabilities, ensure that these people have, they have what they need to succeed. You have people with competence, with character, with the capacity to lead, to do great things. Let the democracy start from your parties. Let there be internal democracy. But what did we see? Substitutions, violence. We saw people being asked to step down, all of those types of things. Who were the people who suffered the most from that? Women. So forgive me when in 2022, women come out and say, yes, we want 35% affirmative action within political party leadership. We also want 35% affirmative action generally, but we also want 111 seats because you're literally throwing everything you have at a problem that doesn't seem to be going away. Right. And that's why I said, despite my reservations, I completely understand it.
Yes.
We look at states today that have passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. They do not have a state action plan. They do not have sexual assault referral centers. International development partners are still pretty much bearing, like 70 to 90% of the burden of ensuring that people who have suffered any form of sexual and gender-based violence get any form of, remedy or remediation. It shouldn't be so. And these are the types of questions our legislators should be asking. These are the types of things that they should be asking themselves questions about. How are you providing oversight? How are you making laws that when they don't get enforced, you actually call people to ask them for questions? And my problem is when legislators want something to happen, they make it happen in one day. We've seen this within the state houses of assembly. We've seen this within the National Assembly. When they want something to happen, it happens in one day. So the problem, I repeat, is not the bill. If the bill is so problematic, then call women to a meeting and say, this is why we think this is a problem. This is why we think that's a problem. When the GAO bill was up, I think, the previous assembly, the National Assembly called for a public hearing during the last assembly for the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. And they didn't show up. No excuse, no notification, nothing. Legislators just didn't show up. And it comes back to perception. How do you even view these people?
Yes.
How do you view these people?
Yes.
What is your perception of them?
Yes.
How do you value them? And that's why if you look at all of the protests that women are doing right now, they're saying we want to be recognized as full citizens of Nigeria.
Let's talk about the protest. There was a massive movement to the National Assembly. Do you feel that the grievances, the reasons for the protest, do you feel that the National Assembly heard you?
I think that the National Assembly is being a little disdainful of women. And I say this because on the first day of the protest, we had a number of senators come out, in trickles. One person would come and go, and then another person would come and go. And it makes you ask the question, where is the value placed on Nigerian women? Where is the value placed on our mothers, on our wives, on our sisters, on our daughters? What is the vision of the National Assembly for Nigerian women? Right? And these are the questions that I continue to think about. When we talk about violence against women, when we talk about advancement of women in public life, these are the questions to ask. And so I think that, it's a little disdainful that, you have one person come out and say, oh, but I voted for the bill. And then you have another person come out and say, oh, but I voted for the bill. I know that women did the work of engaging legislators. I know that 100 people co-sponsored the bill for 111 seats. I know that a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes to convince men that women are worthy of being full citizens of Nigeria. And I think that's what hurts the most.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad if that's where we are. It's really sad.
This is 2022. We have women as defense ministers in other countries.
We have a vice president.
We have, women who are vice presidents. We have women who are prime ministers.
Yes.
Look at even the management of COVID across the world. The people with the best response to COVID were women. And this is not a question of who can lead better. It's just a question of inclusion. And you cannot make laws for us without us. You cannot lead us without us. You cannot claim to know the yearnings of our hearts if you don't have our agenda at the table to have these conversations.
Yeah. So we'll be going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking about the anger of Nigerian women at the National Assembly. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and it's still the Roundup with Zara Denejo, and I'm talking to Ms. Chioma Agwebo, a member of the civil society organizations, ED at TECA, and a Protestant. Can I call you that?
No, just call me a citizen of Nigeria,
She's
please.
a citizen
I'm
of
just
Nigeria.
an angry citizen
and
of
she's
Nigeria.
very angry, and I think it's understandable that Nigerian women are so angry. So beyond the anger, beyond the protest, what is the plan?
Well, we've now been invited by the National Assembly to submit our demands. Again, something that I think is, it's a bit redundant because you already know what this is about, For me, it's akin to the NSAS protest where the government was asking, what is the problem? Or where the government tried to have private meetings with some young people so that they could articulate the problem. But you've already seen the problem. For women, you know exactly why they're out on the streets.
But just to kind of give some sort of context to our viewers, normal voting for bills for legislation is very different. The procedure is quite different from a constitutional amendment.
Agreed.
So I'm wondering, if you submit your demands on behalf of Nigerian women, are you clear on the procedure? Because it is quite a convoluted procedure to bring back a constitutional amendment after it has been voted on. Is there a plan for that?
So here's what I believe very strongly. Man is not made for law. Laws are made for man. I think that we're at an opportune moment. And this is a pivotal moment in our history, right? Where the National Assembly can say, we want to write our name in the sands of time as the ones who turned around the grave injustices that have been done to Nigerian women by the Nigerian state. I believe that if the National Assembly has a meeting with itself and say, we want to bring these bills back, if they say we want to represent these bills, they can do so, right? They are not going to take permission from something that we cannot see.
They might need to take permission from the Constitution, though.
But they are the keepers of the Constitution.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you understand? So for me, it's like we're not asking for anything that's impossible. We're not asking you to raise the dead. We're asking you to ensure that women are included, that women feel like they do have a part in our politics. We're asking that you recognize women as not only as your mothers and daughters and wives and sisters, etc., but as full citizens of the country. That's all we're asking for. And the truth is, like I said before, when legislators want to do something, they do it. So the question of, first of all, I worked on the Not Too Young to Run campaign, right? I led communications for the Not Too Young to Run campaign. We know what a constitution amendment process is like. We know that it needs to go to the 36 states. We know that you need to get 2/3 of the state houses of assembly to say yes. We know that, but we also know that when legislators want something to happen, they make it happen. So everything you want to throw up at me, I'm going to just respond that when they want something to happen, it happens. We've seen states that have done first reading, second reading, it's gone to committees, come back, and the same day, they've made something law.
Yes.
We've also watched the National Assembly, when they want to do something, for instance, around CCB, everything will happen in one day.
Yes.
Sometimes in 2 days, sometimes maximum 72 hours. So what are we saying?
Yes. So you've heard it. If you want to make it happen, you know what to do. Thank you so much, Ms. Agwebo, for joining us. But do you have any final words?
I think it's important for Nigerian women to educate themselves. I think, we shouldn't let up. I'm a strong believer in the fact that advocacy counts. And this is not a civil society thing. This is a Nigerian women thing. And so I'm enjoining, just Nigerian women, young, old. This is our time. This is an opportunity that we mustn't let go of. And, we continue to speak. We continue to make our voices heard. And we know we'll be heard.
Thank you so much for coming on the Roundup. And I do hope that the voices of Nigerian women will be heard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You heard it. You heard it first here. You heard it from Chioma Agwebo, and I think by now, if you're watching this, you must know that Nigerian women were all angry. It is simply absurd to me that my citizenship as a woman in this country is not defined by the Constitution. It's absurd to me that my indigenship as a woman in Nigeria is not defined by the Constitution that governs my life. On social media, it's been a burning topic, and women are asking themselves, Nigerian women are asking themselves, are we a joke to you? We're asking Nigeria, are we a joke to you? Despite the fact that we have the numbers, despite the fact that we are equal partners in nation building, despite the fact that we are the ones who vote, 65% of the voting population is Nigerian women. So when is democracy going to work for us? Those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me on Roundup with Zara Denejo. As always, I'm Zara Denejo, and I will see you next week.